All right. All right. Welcome everybody for another Q&A session. We'll give it another. Okay, I've seen a few people are going to be removed. Um, okay, I'm hoping that they'll be able to get in. Jean, if you or Jean, if you see this, come back soon. All right, I'm going to be transcribing too. All right. Okay, good. So, welcome everybody to another Q&A. I'm going to get straight into it because I think we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. And I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to make it a little bit more interactive than last week. So if you guys can, get your fingers ready in the chat because I'm going to ask a few questions and I'd love to see your guys' answers to it. So let's start off first with what the actual questions are for today. And the two things that I want to focus on is particularly how to motivate when they don't see the bigger picture, right? So gifted kids can often struggle a little bit with what is the point of all this? What is our purpose? And that's one of the biggest challenges for us educators. It's obviously a really big one for parents. So we're going to look into that today. And a big part of that is that if you want to really get through something, like if you basically want to get out of something. So things are hard most of the time. That's a feature of life, as I say to the kids that I work with. But unfortunately, running away from your challenges is not how you deal or how you get stronger. And the only way out of a difficult situation often is to go through. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. So I want to focus on a few key people that, particularly in my research and my studies that I've been working towards, particularly around what we do in Passend Education. And these people have formed a lot of my thoughts on interventions with gifted kids as a gifted and talented specialist. So these are the key people. So first of all, I want to talk a bit about Carol Dweck. Maybe you guys have heard of her before. Mindset is one of her famous works, essentially. Van Tassel Baksa is a very integral and important scholar in gifted and talented education. She has lots and lots of works that I've been basing my own theories on. And I'll delve a little bit in like her thoughts on what she thinks is important when it comes to motivating gifted kids. And then maybe you guys have seen TED Talks from Tim Urban before, talking about the dark playground. Dark playground's a really fun and interactive way in looking at the challenges that are around procrastination. Because when we talk about losing motivation or not seeing purpose, not having an overarching goal is a really big thing. And the dark playground is a really good analogy to show like where we get stuck and how do we help our kids get unstuck, particularly. I want to touch a little bit on Nijart. Betts and Nijart effectively have been also really important scholars in gifted and talented education. In this particular context, we're going to be looking a lot at social profiles that they have and how they overcompensate and undercompensate socially to basically struggle with this existential, why am I doing this kind of thing? And finally, we spoke a lot about flow last week, which is Csikszentmihalyi, which is effectively a big cornerstone of how we get this motivation going. And flow itself describes the path of well, excellent resistance, and we spoke again about this yesterday. But it's an important or last week, but it's an important part of how we're going to help them find meaning specifically. So these are the key people that we're going to be focusing on today. So I'll start a little bit with mindset in particular, because mindset itself is a really interesting theory. To be honest, this started off as a set of how to say, research papers from Carol Dweck herself that seemed innocent enough. And basically, for those that never heard of mindset before, when we talk about mindset, there's effectively two kinds of mindsets that we found. One of it being closed mindset, specifically. So closed mindset. And then we also have growth mindset, which is the opposite of that. So what are these two different kinds of mindsets? In an easy way to explain this is that when you talk about how you view yourself, how good are you, it's sort of almost a nature versus nurture kind of way of thinking. When you think about somebody that is close-minded, these are people that would say, okay, I am good at something, right? So they identify as a particular strong person in a particular field. And a very good analogy of this is like sports. Like some people say, I'm just a really good football player. And the way that they view themselves is if that's how they're born. So it's not really them working hard for it. It's just I got born with this natural talent. That is what closed mindset means. Growth mindset is quite the opposite. So somebody with a growth mindset basically thinks, well, I am maybe not strong yet, but if I work hard and if I focus on increasing my skill, eventually I'll be the best at this I can be. And then generally speaking, growth mindset people that are really good at this keep looking at themselves inwardly rather than outwardly. So it's a little bit of an intrinsic versus like extrinsic motivator as well. Now, why is this important? Like, why do we care? Well, when Carol Dweck started doing research on this, what she did is she said, you know what, it would be interesting to figure out if I ask people that have, like, can I put people in a closed mindset or can I put them in a growth mindset? So that's the first question that you want to know. And then she said, okay, if I put somebody in that mindset, what are the consequences? So she did what is now considered a little bit unethical experiment, but because the impact that she had in her studies was really, really big, and interestingly so, to the point that like if we were to do the experiment again, we could potentially create some really negative consequences with the people involved. So what did she do? Now she took thousands of people and she put them into two groups. And one group, she said, okay, let's do it. Like for all of them, they did an IQ test first to find out like what are their general levels of intelligence. And then they got both groups to do a test. These tests like changed slightly from different groups, but generally speaking, the kind of tests we were doing was quite tough. You know, people had to work for it. And irregardless of what the actual outcome of the test was, to half the participants, they said, you did really well. You're very smart. Well done. And so really big emphasis on the result. And for the other group, they said, you worked really hard. That was great effort. And as a result, like that was amazing. Well done. So a big focus on the process of making the actual test. Then once those tests were done, they would ask both groups which one, like, do you want to do another test to see if you can do even better? And this is what happened. Like with the closed mindset people, they predominantly said, no, I don't want to do a test anymore. The growth mindset people said, oh yeah, great, give me another one. And what was interesting is that when we then did IQ tests with both those groups, that there's a significant difference in IQ scores in both groups after this experiment was done. So I think you can already guess that in closed mindset, that in the unfortunately with the closed mindset, the test scores went down afterwards. The IQ test score specifically. And with the growth mindset, the IQ test scores went up. So that's interesting. What's going on here? Like, how come there's such a significant difference? And for some candidates, the difference was almost like 10%. Now, basically, what is happening about the theory is, because this is obviously still human minds, it's always a bit difficult to completely pin down, is that once you've established that I have an ego as a smart person, that unfortunately, if I do another test, the only way that I can go down and I can be measured again is I can go down. So why do another test? What is the point of all this? And that's the same with growth mindset, because in a sense, with growth mindset, it went like, well, okay, well, I worked hard. That was fun, and we're basically shifting the reward, the dopamine reward, to doing the test. Then doing the test actually gives you another opportunity to get that same kind of praise, because it's the attitude that you get praised for. And obviously redoing a test means, like, with more confidence, often means that they do better. So there's a significant difference in how people approach problems and learning after you do this experiment. And what was really interesting is that this sort of the outcomes of these tests lingered for a very, very long time. And this is where the unethical part of the test comes in, because if you do this and, like the day after everybody is fine, you haven't done that much damage. But basically, in this situation, thousands of individuals had their IQs lowered for a significant portion of time. Right. So now, obviously, the way that she used these particular findings was to come up with much more strong learning materials and interventions to help anybody to try and develop a growth mindset as best as possible. And this is important, and this is why it links back to the question that we're talking about this week, is what is that long-term motivation? And this is where a lot of kids really struggle. Right? Because I want to come back a little bit to what we spoke about last week, which is the dopamine cycle, and how anything we do when it comes to joining in work or committing to homework or studying for something comes down to a basic choice of how much dopamine am I going to get for that if I commit to this real long-term gratification. Now, what is difficult for a lot of our gifted kids is that they are quite intelligent. So they can see the bigger picture of things. And they can also see that a lot of stuff that we tell them doesn't match what they think it matches. So they're very susceptible to becoming closed-minded because they often operate quite well, particularly in kindergarten. And unfortunately, a lot of well-meaning teachers and parents rewards wrong. So they basically focus on the actual outcome rather than the effort, and therefore they build closed mindsets quicker. Now, before I go a little bit into the next step in that, I wanted to do a little exercise with you guys. So I'm going to give you a statement. So let's say the statement is you made a great drawing, right? So you made a great drawing. Well done. So my question to you is, and I would just like to see some people put this in chat. This, of course, is like rewarding the effort. Oh, you made a great painting. Well done. What would you do to change that into a growth mindset? So statement. So basically, how could you change this? Give it a little bit of thought. Like, I'll give you guys like 30 seconds to think of 30 seconds to a minute to think of that. So little tip, emphasize on the action they took to make that drawing, not the actual drawing itself. Let's see if we can come up with some statements from all of you. And if you don't want to write, I would love somebody to raise their hands, and I'll give you a little chance to say something to me. So how would we change, you made a great drawing, well done? You can change that with You did great on your math tests. Doesn't matter. It's the same kind of statement. I have one here. I like how you focus on the brush strokes. They look very detailed and realistic. Great. Really good feedback that is practical. I can see you worked really hard and put a lot of thought in this, and it shows. Well done. Yeah. Right. So focus on that. Right. So if you guys have others that you're still typing, please put them in the chat. Or if you say like, I'm not sure, then we can give you some feedback on that. So this is an important step because if we put them in closed mindsets, the chances that they're going to be struggling with their goals in the future is very high, right? I put a lot of hard work on this. Good job. Yeah, there we go. Same. Yeah. So definitely being careful with this language at home is important. If you unfortunately, if you're like, oh, well done, well done, well done, we get a lot of trouble. Here's a few more. I love the colors you chose, the effort you made. I can see how much you enjoyed it too. I like that part a lot. Like I see how much you enjoyed it. Yeah, so thank you. Those are great. So everybody instinctively knows this, I think, but I think it's very hard for a lot of us to sort of remember this in the moment. So this takes practice, like a lot of practice, and it's kind of fun. Sometimes some of your kids, particularly if they're older, they get a little bit like, yeah, but what do you really think of it? You still have to be a little bit firm in that one, where you basically say, oh no, like, and if they say that, it's like, yeah, but what do you think of it? So well, how do you feel about it? How do you feel you did? And if they say, well, I think I did really well, and I said, so I like you enjoyed that. And then you're still in a growth mindset statement, but you're shifting away from the result. Okay. Another question that I think that is important when we come, and this is actually coming back to Van Tassel Baksa's thoughts. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I see a hand raised. Ping Tae, go ahead. Or was that we're muted? Oh, I didn't think you were, but let me just try and see if I can. I don't see you're muted. I think you can speak. Can you try? Yeah, I don't have you muted, so you can give it a go. If it doesn't work, then like, there we go. Okay, because I can mute you here, and then I can unmute you. Let me just try. So you should be able to unmute. Like, I'm not sure what's going on. Like, I don't think I have muted all. Yeah, I have. Like, I'm sorry. Like, if not, maybe you can try and type it in chat. Ping. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. So the few more. I've seen here, it's okay that you don't get the outcome you want. Most important is you tried your best, and this is when you learn the process gets better every time you try. So yeah, even if they don't get what they want, like focusing on the efforts they put in. And funny enough, actually, when a lot of our kids are not doing well in sports and stuff, we do this quite well. It's like, oh, you tried really hard. That was great. So when the kids actually don't do as well as they want to, or as we want them to, we actually do the right thing. So the thing here is to try and do it when they are successful as well, because the successful dopamine that they get is actually a much more bigger impact on their brain. So they will model behavior after you much more. Yeah, so the question from Ping is like, what do we do then if the kids denies the praise when they do that constantly? And it sort of depends a little bit whether they don't have confidence themselves truly, or they've learned that it's a great way to sort of get attention. So there's a few things with gifted kids that are about like trying to get attention, like again, getting some dopamine. So if a child does it because they want attention, the best way to do it is to not engage with that part. You can just go, okay, so like if you only get like, so if let's say something happens and it creates a positive situation and you think, oh, that was great. And you say, oh, you behaved really well in that situation, well done. And they say, no, I don't agree. Then one thing you can say, well, you are free to disagree with that yourself, but I am really happy for your effort. Thank you. And if you keep doing that and you don't really give them any attention for the negative stuff, they will eventually move on from that. And a bit of that is also about moduling the towards others. Like if you have the luck of having a few more kids that you can do this for, like having that kind of positive vibe is very important. So we do the same when we have really insecure kids doing presentations. So often when we do presentations, a lot of our kids go, they like, I'm sorry, I think I did really badly. And the way that we help this model with the kids itself in the classroom, we get the kids to only give positive feedback. Basically, my mother calls it feed forward, specifically because he wants to get away from this negative connotation, which is feedback. The way that we do this in our classes is that if they start giving negative feedback, we veto their input, like very specifically, nope, no negativity, and then we move on. Yeah, okay. Let me see. Could you repeat that, please? Like maybe you can tell me. Okay, so I see that I already answered the question as well. Yeah, so yeah, you praise me anyways because you're my parents and love me. You can say yes, and I still think you did a good job. So like honestly, that is not an untrue statement. We love what we do. But what is really funny about this stuff is like if you just do it consistently, eventually it becomes a bit of a habit. So where this often comes from a little bit is that if you maybe in the past have been a little bit more strict, or your praise has been a little bit less constructive in terms of like the behavior itself, then that's it. But if they say, oh yeah, you're just praising me because you love me, then basically maybe your praise isn't precise enough. Because if they do something that you've really dissected, like for example, if you have a boy that like starts presenting or talking, and he normally doesn't look people in the eyes at all, and this time he did, you say, you know what? When you were presenting, I saw you really look for eye contact with everybody around you, and as a result, you got people to really listen to you. That looked really good. And then the praise is quite specific. And if they are still very like, "Ooh," like you're just saying that because they think you're overacting, just leave that look very good at. You can just be, it's like, oh, I liked how you did this, how did this, be very specific about that kind of praise. And then even that looked very good after that, you don't even have to do. Like, so if they're, sometimes this is because they're a little bit insecure, sometimes they think you're trying to manipulate them, and you are in a way, but they're not quite wrong. But you can be a little bit, happy-go-lucky, like, yeah, I am. I'm just tired of having negative conversations about stuff. I'm gonna only say positive things. And you do that, it becomes very infectious. So smile when you're doing it, be congruent in your body language, for example. So I hope that answers your question a little bit there, Shadia. So, but yeah, but okay, but where does the like let's bring this back to the crisis that kids have, particularly gifted kids, when it comes to the bigger picture. And again, I want to come back to the dopamine bit, and I'll bring it down into the dark playgrounds very, very soon. So one of the problems that you see when it comes to delayed gratification, particularly with parents and with kids, is that we as parents have actually gone through delayed gratification for our school already. So we've gone through all the hardships that comes with school. And we then know, so we've had the reward. That's the fun part of it. So we've done our homework, we've studied, we've done all the difficult things when it comes to things like social stuff in school, and a lot of it isn't fun. Like school at some points is designed to be a little bit difficult. And we are told, like, when we were young, we were told, yeah, you just have to push through it. And some of us were a bit unlucky where we didn't really have a choice to go through this. But basically, what you tend to see with kids is that, like, when you're telling them, look, there's this delayed gratification coming, it's important, but like, what, like, kid doesn't really know what that means. Like, what does getting a diploma mean if you've never had a diploma before? What does getting into a good university mean if you've never been in a university before? What does having a good job mean? Right? Like I don't understand that. Like I'm young, and even if you logically understand it, you've never gone through the chemical cycle of getting the dopamine for the actual result. So when you work with dopamine, you get dopamine a little bit for doing something. So there is a little bit of instant gratification of working on something, but it's very minimal. And then the actual completion of the task gets you more dopamine. Now, when we work on flow and other things, what we're trying to do is we're trying to highlight the dopamine that you get from working hard. And then we try to link the rewards to the actual action that they took. That is the dopamine trick that you're trying to do. But and if you don't understand how this works yet, that's when you start going into that fear state, which is linked to flow, right? So if you're bored, you're either you're in a fearful state. We spoke a lot about that last week, so I recommend for those that haven't seen this, go look at the last week's session, because I go very deep into that. But if we take that into the dark playground, I can explain a little bit of where that sits. So we know that if somebody does something that is too hard or too easy, it doesn't get enough dopamine for this, then what happens is we become fearful. So we become scared. And then what our brain does, it wants to stop us doing that task and do anything else. And the dark playground, so this is Tim Urban's dark playground model. Hopefully some of you guys have seen his TED Talk. It's really fun. He has ADHD as well, I believe. So like his dark playground is something even more intense, but it's quite fun to watch. And basically the idea of the dark playground is this is where you live. This is your flight. Where do you run towards to do anything else but the task you're supposed to be doing? Again, either because it's boring or because it's too hard. And what happens if you're in the dark playground? He calls it the instant gratification monkey. I would just call it the working memory, as far as I'm concerned. And basically, the working memory is just going very simple. Oh, this gives me more dopamine. I'm doing this. This gives me more dopamine. Doing that. And then, fortunately, when you look at the actual stuff that our kids get addicted to, it's very hard for them to put it down. So YouTube and TikTok and all these video channels right now, they're getting worse and worse in the way that they actually get our kids in. And they give so much instant gratification that it's almost unfair how much they have to fight against it, to the point where I'm a very strong believer that you have to limit this amount of stuff very, very clearly, particularly if they have to do things that they're responsible for. And the same with the phone, but there's thousands of other things. And honestly, even things like perfectionism fit within this thing. So perfectionism, perfection itself sits in that dark playground. So they can sometimes really enjoy something like, I don't know, like doing math or reading, and they can just focus on that and become a perfectionist in it. And then it's actually even harder to, so you tell them, hey, you need to work on something else, right? And the thing is, they sometimes fool themselves into doing this. So what happens is they think that they're working, and then their own brain tricks them into working on things that sit in that perfectionism area. And when I talk to the kids, I say, I call this spinning your wheels. You're running your wheels out as fast as you can. but you're not moving forward at all. But you've never pressed the pedal down harder than you did before. So you should be moving forward, but you're not, unfortunately. So perfectionism sits inside here. And what Tim talks about is that there's basically a little area out of the dark playground. So essentially, where you can get out of the dark playground is here, up a big tree trunk, basically. And if you start working on the task that you have to do, you can slowly try to climb out of it. Now, what I say is that around this particular tree trunk, the one that you have to climb, sits a ocean of fear. Now, this ocean is a mile wide, but an inch deep, right? So there's a lot of stuff in there where you go, I'm scared to do it. But once you start walking through it, actually, it's not as hard as you think. And what happens then is that you have to find a reason for them to come in here. Now, I'll make the model. I'll finish the model a little bit, and then I'll talk about like how this relates to their overall goals in the future. So three things can happen when you're in there. So essentially, if you start climbing up this tree, at some point, you can either fall down again, like straight into, so there might be some branches that look like they're going the right way, and they'll make you fall back into. But there's also, and this is really nasty, I had literally a girl today was talking about this. This is sort of like the valley of uncanny distraction. And what is so important about this bit is that this looks like you're doing something productive. So one of the girls I was talking to said, like, yeah, I started playing piano again, and everybody was praising me for that thing. So it felt like very useful. But unfortunately, the piano was distracting her from studying for what she really wanted. And she sort of knew this, but like the sidetrack like is a really nasty one. So and sometimes you just fall off these branches back into the actual playground. So you then have to sort of go all the way back. So unfortunately, when you're in that uncanny valley, it's really hard to sort of find a way up. Like you end up like having to restart the whole task. Now, if you keep going up this branch, either two things can happen. Like maybe you finish the task. So you're lucky the task is finished. Great, well done. If the task is a little bit longer though, a very big branch comes off, and this is your flow branch. So if you get into this particular flow branch, you're great, right? So the flow branch is basically where you can do everything that you want in a very efficient manner. It really feels great, and that's where you want to be. Now, at the top of the actual tree, is the happy playground, right? So think of this like a nice like tree house, with like all kinds of stuff, and it contains the same things that you would find in the dark playground. So the big difference is you've finished your tasks, and therefore engaging with things like your phone and your and basically YouTube or whatever that is okay at that point. And one of the things that we actually tell them is like, okay, well, if you really want to try and find this critical path, the critical opening, then what you need to do is you need to give yourself some reasons and why you want to go up there in the first place. So even though these things in the bottom here are technically the things that stop you doing what you want, if you would do them when you're finished with your responsibilities, they're no longer a procrastination habit. So you can use sometimes rather than trying to, lock the phones or all that kind of stuff, you can just say, how about we have like, we call it the happy hour over here, right? At the end of the day, you will get 30 minutes or an hour worth of your procrastination that you want to do. And what this does, it actually gives like a little goal to say, okay, if I manage to get up the tree trunk enough, there's a natural reward for me, or a natural consequence of me doing my responsibilities. And if they get into flow, actually they don't need it. So a lot of times they'll go, oh, actually, I don't need all this stuff that I want to do in the first place. Then you'll see them get like, okay, maybe I'll start writing some stuff, or they do even more. and that's of course even better. But it is more earned if they can learn how to come up with something in flow that they care enough about that it would overtake something that normally is their procrastination habit. Because when we talk about things like devices and like how do you help your kids deal with this, you basically taking it away doesn't make them stronger for it. And this is the big dilemma between, a lot of parents that go like that I speak to, they go, "Oh, man, I know that them watching YouTube or Roblox is bad for them, but I also know that like me denying it completely like denies them the opportunity to learn how to get better at it." And that's really true, right? So when we start working with the teens, we start talking about this particular thing. And then some of you might have seen the work that we were doing with the Dark Playground. So the very first step that we normally do is help them identify what are the things that they procrastinate with. And then we start talking about how do we hack those habits, or how do we use the urges that they have to deal with to do these things and put them higher up the tree of productivity, so to speak. Now, another big thing that really helps, and obviously this becomes more and more important as the kids get older and older and older, is almost like a big Christmas tree. We put a big star on the top, right? Like that basically is your lifetime goal. And this is like, okay, like this could be university, this could be work. There's lots of things here. And as they get older and they do more things, their goals become bigger and bigger and bigger. So like, and obviously that goal normally is related to what they do in their flow state. Like if you can find what puts them in flow state the most easy, then you'll probably find the direction in which they need to go for this. And the reason why a lot of gifted kids really don't like feel this is that a lot of ways that we try to get kids inspired with goals, they just don't get. It's like too nebulous. They don't understand it. It's often pushed down quite a bit, and we know as educators that in order to give real good advice about what your future goals should be and where you can get the best success, however you want to define that, you can't base it on what like anecdotal evidence you have from family members around you. That's unfortunately how the world works. One, most family members still pretend that they're doing better than they are doing. So even if you have somebody that looks to be quite wealthy, maybe they aren't as wealthy as you think they are. If that is the measure of your success, maybe their health is not quite where they need to be, or they're quite unhappy. But also, what we think is a successful career today doesn't really match with what it needs to be 5 or 10 years from now. And now that AI is coming, everybody knows that this isn't true. Like we really have to be a bit more, how to say, flexible, or more informed on what that is. And there is ways to get that kind of information. And I'll be honest, there's specialists that really say what you can do. But what I normally tell the students is actually there's always these particular kind of articles in newspapers that will talk about we have a shortage of these kind of people. And those are the ones that are very interesting. Because if they say we have a shortage of doctors, or we have a shortage of plumbers, or we have a shortage of like data scientists or AI specialists. Like funny enough, I remember watching some articles about 2019 when everybody's saying we don't have enough AI specialists. Now, if you would have basically started your career in computer science in AI, then you would have been finished roughly 2023. You would have probably had 2 years worth to get some experience. And where would you be now if you would have graduated 2 years ago with some kind of AI stuff? So there is ways to find this, and one of the things that we need to do is we really need to help them look for that kind of information, and then see if some of that information matches what they like doing in the first place already. But, and I have a bit of a caveat there, like, because if they say, oh, I'm just not good at some stuff, so some stuff I get into flow and some stuff I don't, then what is happening though is they're back into a closed mindset. Right. So you need to be careful that, like, if they say, well, you know what, I like learning these things and I really enjoy that and I can see there's depth here and I want to build my expertise in this, that's growth mindset and it's fine. If they say, no, I'm just good at math and they're just letting go of everything else because of it, then unfortunately, that's not the right way to really approach that, because they will get beaten by a colleague with the same level of intelligence and skills that is on a growth mindset path. And this is why, like, if we're talking about success in the future, we can't really let that go. Okay. Let me talk a bit about where grit sits in, because obviously the analogy of going up a tree is tough. Right? We're talking about grit. And again, grit is about, like, not giving up when things are hard, and ideally either because you know that the goal is good enough or you like the actual thing. So in flow, the analogy of climbing a mountain is used a lot, because once you're up there, you can't stop. You have to keep going in order to really win. So there is a little bit of, I've committed to going up this tree, and now I need to see it through. And this is when I was presenting to you guys, like before you signed up, where I said, hey, watch out, here be dragons. Like, there's a lot of kids that are currently trying to go up this tree, and they're basically saying, oh, like, I don't know where I can get there, and they're scared to fall back into their dark playgrounds, or they've moved into some uncanny distraction valley bits, and they seem like they're okay there. So we need to prevent that from happening. Now, I want to talk a bit about goals, because goals themselves are sometimes people, like, there's actually two kinds of people, and there's two kinds of goals that relate to this. And these people that have these really clear goals, and they go, okay, I have my whole thing set out. I want to be a CEO of this kind of company. I need to learn these and these and these things, and I'll do these and these extracurricular activities. And everything seems like for these kids, like, oh, I know exactly what I want. And a lot of people, and particularly internet gurus, will go like, yeah, that's exactly what we need. This is how you progress. And for about for half the people, that is true. Like, having that kind of goal is how they get motivated for things. But unfortunately, I mean, not really unfortunately, there is another kind of goal setters that completely function the opposite way of this. And you might know yourself, if you're one of these two, like, there's some people that if you ask them to set a goal, and they can't do it. It doesn't matter how hard you push them, they just don't know what to do. Like, we have an exercise we do with the kids, and we do this normally around year 10, 11, because that's when really the motivation to commit to deep learning needs to come in. And we give them a piece of paper and we ask them to draw their perfect life. And what does that look like? What kind of house do you live in? What kind of kids do you have? And there's lots of different versions of this exercise. You've probably heard of the version where you say, write your own like tombstone slogan, or analogy, like things like that, like where you have to think back of, like, your life is sort of past, like, what would you have achieved? And those are great exercises. But some kids, when you give them this exercise, you can let them sit down for a half hour, nothing will come out. They can't do it. They don't know where this goes. And but with gifted kids, this is super extreme. I've had kids that really start shaking, like almost scared, because they think, oh, I need a goal. But they don't operate in this way. How they do operate, though, is the exact opposite. That no goal at all, but micro improvement on a daily basis. And honestly, I'm always like, I'm a very big goals kind of guy, and I've always have been. And I say I always have a lot of respect for people that can just go, no, you know what? I want today to be slightly better than yesterday. And then these kind of kids normally are really good at building little SOPs and ways to track how well they've done yesterday for themselves and what they could do today to improve themselves. Because what these kids are doing is like a continuous improvement kind of goal. And that is okay too. Because a continuous improvement kind of goal still sits on top of this dark playground tree, as it were. So you need to figure out with your children which one of the two you have. This is really important, because if you have a child that doesn't resonate with long-term big goals, and you keep hammering this down, you're creating a lot of distrust from them, generally speaking, because they don't understand what's going on. It's not how their brain functions. So one thing that you can do is you can ask them. It's like, okay, like you could just exercise at home if they haven't done it with us yet, and say, okay, why don't you come up with what you want to look like when you grow up? And if they can't answer it, then say, okay, how about this? How would you want to make tomorrow better than today? Right? Or if you ask them in the morning, how could you make today better than tomorrow? And let's write some things down that you could do there. And if the funny thing is, the kids with the big goals can't do that at all. And because, like, generally speaking, when you get kids with big goals, what happens is, if they have all these little things planned out, if they make a small mistake, so they miss something, or something just goes off the rails, and life happens like that all the time, then going off the rails and planning it out this much means that they are going to not complete their goal, and then they go into existential crisis. And that is basically a big problem that you have to help them with, right? Because, like, if you so with the big overarching goal, kids, what you need to do is you need to help them adhere to this big overarching goal. So ask them if they want to make a decision on something. Is this going to get you close to your goal, yes or no? But don't expect them to come up with daily improvement kind of things. That is hard for them. So they can learn, and we do a lot of stuff to teach them this, but you can't force it, because it will make them go like, okay, I don't know what to do anymore. And the flip side of that is the same with the kids that like do micro improvement goals on a daily basis. They are great at really continuous improvement. The problem is that they don't always have the overview. So they can paint themselves in a proverbial corner sometimes. And if they do, then it's very hard for them to find the path that they need to go. So both strategies have their merits and their downsides. And as long as they're aware of which one of the two that is actually fine. Okay, let me see. We got a few other notes here, because they're so how does this relate to the way out is through, effectively, right? So that's the next step. Like, how do we get the way out is through from this? Well, this is the part with grit, right? So, like, I believe that a big part of becoming more happy is agency. So they need to have some choice. When you have agency, you get responsibility. Once you commit to responsibility, you need to have grit to see it through. And this is where, both as parents and as educators, we have to be a little bit firm with them. We give them all the choice to come to this particular conclusion, figure out, like, okay, what thing am I going to commit to? I'm going to start climbing. But once they climb, they have to commit through. If not, they will build stronger habits towards the things that will keep them in the dark playground, and it will be harder for them to cross that sea of fear next time. And this is really, really an important part. Like, I can't stress this enough. If we let them just run away when things get a little bit hard or a little bit frustrating, you're basically setting them up to fail for a lot of stuff in the future. Okay, let me see. I think because we only have about like 10 minutes left, I want to talk a little bit about, like, okay, so what do we do? Like, what are some tips that we can do at home to basically help out? So, home tips to help our kids with this. Now, for example, if you get them coming in and they say, like, I don't want, what's the point of this? What can we do? And one of the things that we do as parents is we then go, okay, well, yeah, but you're going to go into university and then all this and all that kind of stuff. And again, like, it doesn't mean anything for them yet. So what you can do is you can sit down and say, okay, well, what would be reasons why this would be important? So you go and brainstorm why this would be important together. And it's important that they come up with their own solution. And then when they do, you emphasize them coming up with that. Like, so you're actually tricking them into giving them a little bit of extra dopamine for that particular activity. So when they resist the project, say, okay, let's find out reasons why that is. If they haven't, sometimes they say, yeah, but I want to do this. Like, I want to do this instead. I'm very strong, right? Then what you can do is you can say, okay, well, let's have a look at like what things you could do that could make you fail reaching that goal that you want. So a good example is somebody saying, I want to be an accountant. I don't want to, I'll give a better example. Sometimes I get kids that say, I want to be in psychology. I don't want to do math. I'm no longer good at it. There's no point. And ironically, if you want to become a good psychologist, you have to do a lot of research, and actually, particularly statistics is extremely important. But a lot of kids, when they get psychology in school, for example, don't get taught this at all. They don't get to see a lot of scientific articles and how to calculate significance, for example, and other kind of statistical models that they use in research. So when I had a few kids like this, what I said is, okay, well, like, you want to become a psychologist. That's what you said. What does that mean to you? Like, you want to become a doctor. So, okay, so that means if you want to become a doctor, you get your doctor, you need to put some scientific work towards the scientific community. Now, what does that look like? Like, how could you, if you don't write any articles, can you become a psychological doctor? And the answer to that is generally no. Okay, so you need to write articles. So, like, if you don't want to, if you say, I want to be a psychologist, one way to never become one is not to write scientific articles. Okay, great. Okay, so let's say you didn't decide how do we then become a doctor? Well, we write scientific articles. Good stuff. How can you not get your scientific articles published? Or how can you not defend your article in your doctorate defense? And then the answer to that is, well, having statistically insignificant articles, like, so no math to back it up. And then you start seeing, oh, there is a reason why you should commit to math. And it's the same with things like, for example, Mandarin. Like, so let's say if you don't like Mandarin specifically, so what are ways that the things that child wants to do in the future that would make it harder or impossible to do if you won't like commit to some kind of Mandarin, for example? And there's ways to relate that. Like, you can have a discussion together about like what that is, and try to be fair in that. And this is where your expertise as a parent can come in. So finding the problem of how to not become something is easier for our minds to do than coming up with a solution for it. And that is really true if as a young adult or young teen, you may not have had that experience, for example. Okay, so then the next thing, so this is the so ask why together is the first step, ask why together. And as sort of part of that, like, ask how to fail at a goal. Like, so you and then flip it. And this is like a little trick to get there. So that's the first tip that I would have. The next tip that we could look into is when they basically struggle. So they really don't like it. Things are hard, and they're trying to climb up this dark playground tree, and they can't seem to do it. The way to get them over that is to reframe the actual struggle as growth. And there's lots of ways you can do that. You can relate it to sports, particularly if they like this, or you can relate it to other things that they find difficult. Like, you can use the story of, like, okay, if you're a fireman specifically, and you want to save people, you have to overcome your fear of running into a burning building, because it's a pretty heavy fear that you have to deal with. So, okay, what do firemen do? Well, they actually train harder by going into buildings that often are set on fire in a more intense, unrealistic way, to practice how to do it when a real fire happens. so that they can save people, and they carry heavier dummies, and they train, and they run upstairs more than others. So the struggle is how they grow. And that's the conversation you have with them, and ideally you want to have that conversation as early as possible. So before, if they already say, this is too hard, I don't want to do it, it actually means that maybe you didn't have this conversation often enough, or you didn't model it at home. So that is basically the second tip, which is reframe struggle as growth. Right? So that is, and then the third one is this is a simple one. This one is quick to do, particularly if they say like, I don't want to do any of this stuff. Often, it's just their brain saying, I can't do this, I'm scared. Right? So that is another reason that they sometimes say things like, I don't want to do this. It's just their logical brain trying to protect their ego, because they're in growth mindset. They're not in growth mindset, in closed mindset. They're trying not to take the next test, because if they take the next test, they might fail. Therefore, I'm going to be less for taking this test. Why take the risk? Right? That is where they are. So what we do is we take the thing that they're scared, that they're procrastinating with, and we make it a reward in the happy hour. So basically what you do is you make the rewards, make the dark playgrounds the reward. So that obviously means you have to be a little bit careful that you do this at the right time. Maybe you need, like particularly younger kids, you need to help them a little bit with their device management and stuff like that, depending on what their dark playground is. The dark playground could be reading a book. There's lots of different things. Helping them say, you know what, you can't do this now, but I'll make a time and place for you where you can, if you've done these particular responsibilities. And this is important again, like you really have to emphasize that if they want to get out of this particular dark playground and up that hill, the way out is through. If we just let them run away from their problems, they are going to do this indefinitely, and it's going to have an impact in their exams later. It's going to have an impact in their careers. The idea of gifted burnout is so prevalent that in the Netherlands right now, our mother company and my mom itself has been shifting most of her help towards adults that haven't had the kind of support that gifted kids get in the Netherlands. So in the Netherlands, people like myself, specialists, are very common. Almost every school has access to a gifted specialist and programs like this. And as a result, a lot of gifted kids do get a lot of help. But there's a big chunk of gifted adults that never had this help before, and they are really, really, really stuck. And the psychologists can't necessarily help them because their problems are a metacognition issue. And learning your whole life, and this particular dark playground with the tree of happiness, is this whole thing keeps happening for the rest of your life. So I think with that, I have spoken what I want to talk about today. I have a little bit of time for a few questions still. So if anybody has any questions, I would love to hear them.
Have you heard of any researchers who found that if a kid is bored, a good antidote or solution would be perhaps asking them which musical instrument they'd like to take up?
Yeah, I mean, I won't know any particular direct scientist that would say that that's the case. We do know that there's two kinds of bored, right? There's bored when you're doing an activity that you're supposed to do, and then you're going into dark playground to do something else. And there's just bored when you've done all your work and you're understimulated. Now that particular kind of latter kind of boredom honestly, doing something like an instrument or anything else like that is great. I can't recall the actual studies, but we know that like learning things like a new language or learning new musical instruments activate different parts of the brain. So it helps with a particular kind of retention of information. It keeps the neural flexibility like in top performance. So like when the kids, so this is the other thing I always tell the parents, so that's important. Whether they learn a new language or whether they learn a musical instrument doesn't really matter. It does the same thing. Like even learning how to play chess, for example, like also creates these like recognizing patterns is part of chess. It's also part of music, right? So and then translating that into fine finger movements, like whether it's chess or it doesn't really matter. So if you as a parent want to encourage them to say, okay, you know what, you're bored, go find something to do that will stimulate you, that has some of these characteristics that would help you with your development. Let them explore. And then what I tend to say is when you find a few different things. So honestly, as a parent, you shouldn't matter whether they play piano or they play the flute or the cello, or whether they pick up Spanish or something else. Like it's the same outcome for us. So you're giving them agency again. But when you commit to this new skill, see it through. So agree together on what is the intended outcome. So play piano, what level are you going to get to? And only when you get to that level, you get to decide if you want to switch. And actually, that is a big thing that I try to tell the kids when we work with them as well. It's okay, you've gone through the trial class, you're here. Okay, you're committed. Now, if they come to us and say, oh, you know what, we don't really want to do it, it's not as fun anymore as we thought. And then we ask them, it's like, okay, are you bored or is it too hard? And most of the time it's because it's actually too hard. The ones that say it's I'm both bored and it's too hard, it's like obviously they don't know what they're feeling yet. So that's the issue. We need to help them figure that one out. But if they say, well, I'm just bored, then I say, okay, well, set goals. Like let's set a goal, like set a high aspirational goal, not unrealistic. We'll agree on that in advance. And then when you hit your goal, that's when you decide whether you want to continue or not. And the thing that will happen is this: it's like if they hit that goal, and we've praised the effort getting there. Normally, when they're there, and we ask them, "Do you want to continue?" They will want to continue. And then the thing though is that a lot of parents sometimes forget is that when they say, "Oh, I want to continue," to forget to set another goal. This is very important. So I set another goal. Say, cool, you're committing again. What is the next goal? Like you're doing Taekwondo. Okay, great. Let's do one more. Let's do another belt or do two more belts. Or I want to attend and like a tournament and come in like at least in the top 3. Now, whatever that goal is, really depends. And when it comes to competitive sports or things like competitive math, like I tell my kids that I work with, it's like, look, when you commit to anything, you go 100%. Like if you're doing anything that has some kind of competition, we go out to win. Right, because at that point we join in and we try to win. Not obviously this at the cost of play a cheater, like you do it in a fair, proper, ethical way. That's important. But we will measure how much energy you have left at the end of it, not like whether you joined. Like if you join a competition, you do it for all the marbles. But school is not a competition. Not one they have a choice in. So that's a big difference. Like I don't like committing people to extreme stress when it comes to performing if they have no choice, because then if they are failing, then we build up PTSD and that has a lot of consequences. Does that answer your question a little bit? I hope it does.
Yes, and a lot more. Thank you.
Okay, great. I have time for one more question and then I'll let you guys all go. So is there any more questions you guys have? And there's a bit of silence there. So
Hi, TJ.
yes, go ahead.
For me, my child is in year 4. I struggle a lot with, how you said about we don't let them give up too early when things get hard.
Mm-hmm.
So when he is in a good mood, and we know he's capable of achieving the goals, the missions, and everything, but there are times where he would just not want to try, and then of course we try to encourage him, but he tends to shut down emotionally or become angry, and then we fall into this spot where, when does it get to when we push him too hard, or they're quite smart, right? You give in to them, and then they figure out, okay, I can get away with not doing it if I do this. I mean, as parents, we try a lot of, we got tricked a couple of times, and then we realize, okay, no, we can't just let him, just I'm too tired, or he just gives up too easily. So where do you call, where, you want to not want them to give up, but not push them too much as well? Or I know about the reward, like if you set the mission, and if they achieve the target, and then you will. But I don't want to put it as so big that every time I want him to complete something, that there is a reward, waiting for him at the end.
Yeah. So I mean, there's either one of two things here, right? Like, either they are really struggling to get there, so the task is maybe sometimes a little bit too hard for them, right? Or they are doing it to get certain kind of attention. So the first thing is figuring out which one of the two it is. Because if it is really too hard for them, and they're basically not getting anywhere, we have to sometimes readjust the goal a little bit. Now, readjusting the goal doesn't necessarily mean letting go of the goal completely. It means chopping it up into smaller bits. And we, like, one of the ways that our projects work is that we really go, okay, short project, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. You only get to work in our time, so they only get about 6 hours for it, which is not that much time to complete a project, to be honest. And then we basically chop them into small bits. And what I can do is for next week's session, what I'll do is I'll do a session on how to break down a task into smaller bits, because that's like a good half-hour session that you can take, so that you at home know what we do in our classes, so that you can take them through it if they get stuck, right? So if it's really too hard, we need to help them with that. Like, so that's the part where we have to have that conversation with you, myself as an educator, any other teachers that are involved with this, because this can happen not necessarily in our classes, for example, and then go, okay, like how do we help him break the task down into small manageable chunks, so that you can get that positive escalation upwards. If it's because they figured out that, hey, this is a great way to get attention, and this is always a bit hard, because like when you sometimes when they decide not to do something, like they say, oh no, I'm just not doing it, and then all the like, oh come on, let's do it, let's help, like let's figure that out. All this is still attention, which is very, very tough. So in positive discipline, sometimes, like a good example of this, like, and I'll use a toddler as an example, because a lot of this stuff comes from toddler behavior, to be honest, in the beginning, and as they get older, sometimes it takes a little bit different form. But sometimes you have certain toddlers don't want to do something. So, for example, where you're playing, this is a very classical positive discipline example that we often would use in our sessions as well, where you say you have a toddler and you're out at a party and they're having fun and they want to leave. Right, so you want to leave. Like, they don't want to, but you want to leave, and they get really upset. Right, so this is probably like a situation some of you have experienced yourself, or you've seen somebody else experience, and then a big tantrum, or like really sad kind of face, and they just don't want to budge. What is happening in this situation is that the child is actually not capable of managing their emotions very well yet, or they've learned that, like, by kicking a tantrum, they either get their way or they get the attention that they want, right? So the way to deal with that sometimes is actually quite like straightforward. is sometimes helping them remove them from that situation by just saying, okay, I'm just picking you up. So the way that let me take one little step back. Technically, what should have happened is you should have given them a little warning in advance where you said, right, you got 5 minutes left to before we have to leave, right? Or even better, you go to them and say, okay, we want to leave. How many minutes do you need to clean up to clean up? And then ask them to do this. And then after that 4 minutes, you come back. If they say, oh, I need 4 minutes, you come after 4 minutes and then you're firm. And then if they then kick a fuss, then you say, okay, no, we agreed 4 minutes. So now I'm going to give you this choice. You can either leave on your own feet or on mine. And that what that implies is that you're just going to carry them out, take them out of the difficult situation, and then deal with it when there's not a lot of people around and so on. And then sometimes dealing with that is just like, okay, like we're just leaving. I'll just pick you up, we go. And then not even talk about it in that sense. Now there is other, what I can do is I can put that in particularly the course coming up as one of the ways to practice this, because this is not easy. I'll be really frank. And I think the best way to do this is like in a small like role play in our face-to-face sessions. But I hope this helps you with some ideas of what you can do. Does that answer your question?
Kinda, but I will try and practice some of the tips that you have addressed, and see if it has any positive changes in my scenario. Thanks.
Yes, no worries. And again, if you need some help with that, like modeling it or practicing it at our sessions, just let us know, and then we can be a little bit like it's kind but firm, if that makes sense. And I think like I'll do a part on positive discipline and how to starve the negative emotions from the attention they want. I'll put it in the next week's session because it's also good, like half hour. Is that okay, Marcia?
Yes, sure.
Yes, okay. So I see a lot of people leaving, but because we're out of time already. So thank you guys very much for coming in. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll put this one online again, like last time. And if you have any other questions for next session, please put it in our chats or put it in the Google form that we have. And I'll also share our Facebook page yet again for you guys to come and like us if you haven't done so already. There we go. And then I hope to see you guys in either our classes very soon. And if you have any feedback on anything, I would love to hear it. So thank you guys very much. And I wish you all a very good evening.